well, I'll try to set a little bit the scene, you know, for our workshop and for the discussions that we're going to have on municipal solid waste in Europe. So over the last 2 decades, the EU has adopted a set of legislation aiming at reducing waste generation impacts by shifting municipal solid waste management from waste disposal, that you can see at the bottom of this triangle, to waste preparing for reuse and recycling, so that you can see on the top of this triangle, thus trying to move basically municipal solid waste management up into this waste hierarchy. So I was mentioning a set of legislation, so this set of legislation basically is composed of 4 main directives that I'm just mentioning, and I won't be commenting and going into the details really of the table that you have in front of you, that is summing up all the targets that lies ahead, so to speak, of the operators and the different member states in the EU. But so among those 4 directives, you have the landfill directive, which dates back 1999. Then there is the waste framework directive that's been revised recently. There is the single-use plastic directive, which is dated 2018, and the amended version of the packaging and packaging waste directive. So as you can see, it's really a set of legislation that has been adopted across the last 20 years. And these directives, they define very specific and challenging targets for municipal solid waste collection and management. And of course, those targets, those very ambitious objectives, well, they are intended along with the circular economy package to boost actually the transition towards circular economy. And how to do that? Well, by maximizing the value of the waste materials that are collected, by minimizing the material and resources consumption, and by preventing waste generation. So I know that some of the following speakers will also mention some of the targets that you can see in this slide. So I will not spend too much time, you know, on these targets, but just have some of them in mind, because in some of the information that I'll be sharing with you in the following slides, the targets for 2020 and the ones for 2035 are key elements that are used to assess the investment efforts that lies ahead, you know, to reach the targets of 2035. So just keep that in mind regarding the landfilling, with a maximum of 10% right here, and the 65% of municipal waste recycling. So, well, okay. Well, now we know we have you know, put very briefly, very shortly, what lies ahead in terms of objectives. But where do we start? You know, where do we start from? What is the current state of the sector? Well, one first thing that we can say is that the sector is pretty fragmented and atomized, with more than 47,700 waste operators, both public and private operators across EU 28. Those are figures from Eurostat dated 2018. Actually, approximately 3/4 of those operators are micro companies. So they're very small companies, and we only have a few big players, you know, in the game, a few big operators in the game, but 99% of these waste operators are SMEs, so very fragmented, with a small number of employees. So very fragmented market, but nevertheless a pretty dynamic market with an annual turnover of 184 billion euros. And with this turnover, with collection accounting for 41% of this turnover, materials recovery 33%, and treatment and disposal 23%. And the sector has proven quite dynamic, actually, over the past years, from 2011 to 2017, with an increase of 26% of the turnover of the sector, which is actually pretty dynamic. And when we compare it to water is a lot less dynamic, is twice as less dynamic, for instance, compared to waste. The reason why I'm comparing is because this waste webinar is organized by the water area and department of the FSR. So obviously, this is a bit of a natural comparison for me. Talking about the funding scheme, of the sector, well, it relies on several sources and several financial flows. So you have the fees that are paid by the users. Obviously, you have the public funds, whether they are coming from municipal, regional, or national budget. And you have, of course, some grants and transfers coming from the European Union funds, or from international financial organizations, such as EIB, that we will be listening later on. So granting some loans and for projects, but I will let, of course, Jonas talk about that a lot better than myself. And we have also some funding deriving from extended producer responsibility schemes, so that we call EPR schemes, so that you see over here, EPR schemes, so coming from producers that are organized, let's say, to collect some funds to fund some recycling, collection, waste treatment and recycling schemes. Okay, so this is like what the sector, let's say, looks like. So now, where do we stand with regard to EU municipal waste collection and management targets? Well, in 2018, 30% of the municipal waste was recycled, 28% was incinerated, 23% landfilled, and 17% composted. So although landfilling has declined steadily since 1995, it still remains well above the 2035 targets of 10% in 19 EU member states. So obviously you'll say, well, today is only 2020, so we have a bit of time ahead of us. But just keep in mind that 19 EU member states are still pretty far from the targets that I mentioned in the first table regarding the 10%. Recycling and composting remains below 50% in 20 countries, and this you can easily see it on that slide. With so this line being the landfilling target of 10%, and this one being the 50% recycling and composting target. And as you can see, well, here in green you have the recycling and composting. So basically, when we're up here, all the remaining countries do not reach this recycling and composting targets of 50%. Which was to be reached. This one was to be reached by 2020. So here we are facing current, I'd say current issues with regard to EU targets. For this one, as I was mentioning earlier, right, it has to be reached by 2035. So there is some work, that lies ahead, with landfilling being shown in purple. So each time basically that we're below this red line means that there's still some work to do, to reach the target by 2035. So indeed, there is some work to do, and obviously some investments basically are required to meet either the 2020 targets or the 2035 targets. So there is a study that has been commissioned by the European Commission, which was done by COWI and Eunomia, and that was published in 2019. So this study tried to estimate, the capex needs to achieve the targets that are set for 2035. And the capex needs, according to that study, equals to 31.5 billion euros. So in EU 28, that would amount to 2.1 billion per year until 2035. As you can see, the major financial effort would be directed towards collection, as you can see over here, with 35% of this overall investment needs, then followed by recycling and reprocessing, 34%, and bio-waste with 24%. As you can see on the bottom graph, well, there is a wide variety of situation, obviously, with France at one hand, having to invest approximately 5 billion euros, while in Malta it would be 100 times lower with regard to the financial needs. Of course, when you compare that with per capita needs, the picture is quite different. So although this study does exist, one of the issues that we notice with the study is that it takes for granted that 2020 targets have been met, which, as we've seen, in the previous slides, which is not the case. So we do believe that this capex needs might be underestimated, and this is very, very something that we can definitely discuss, and it's a very interesting point to discuss. Of course, today during this webinar, but also later on, in the work that we can do at the Florence School of Regulation. So my last slide would be to say, well, basically, taking into account and taking stock, of the current situation of municipal waste management in Europe and of the upcoming challenges for the sector, well, regulation appears really crucial, to play a key role, especially in a context, where important investments will have to be made to reach those very ambitious and challenging recycling objectives. Also in a context where the sector faces long-lasting structural issues, such as the fragmentation that I mentioned, such as the small size market that I also mentioned, and all of that is preventing sometimes the sector from generating sufficient financial resources to face those massive investment needs. So in this context, well, regulatory issues will play a key role, and regulators, regardless of the institutional setup of the sector, which is obviously different in each member state, regardless of this institutional setup, well, regulatory questions and issues will be key, such as strengthening the financial viability of services, increasing the cost reflexivity of tariff, improving the cost recovery, incentivizing investment through economic regulation of rate of return, in the context of very important investment needs, effective use of economic and policy tools to improve technical and economic efficiency, separate collection schemes. So here also with sufficient treatment capacity and sufficient market absorption capacity, which is today a real issue. And of course, we do need to enhance quality of monitoring data, because what you cannot assess and quantify, well, then it is difficult to manage it properly. So I'll finish right there, but I'll be very happy to share your views, on those questions and those elements later on during the webinar. Well, thank you very much.